Nobody warns you that ruling Jerusalem can feel less like wearing a crown and more like managing the world's most haunted construction site. By day, it's hot stone, cedar dust, and 600 men sweating through loincloths while somebody drops another block on his foot. By night, something invisible comes through the work camp and wrecks the place so thoroughly that by sunrise your holy building project feels like it was supervised by raccoons from the abyss. Hey guys, tonight we begin with the testament of Solomon, the king who commanded demons. We're heading into a Jerusalem full of hammering, shouting, splintered scaffolds, and one deeply unsettling rumor. Every evening, after the laborers finally stop groaning and limp home, something else clocks in. You're going to feel what it's like when a royal temple project stops being merely expensive and starts feeling cursed. So before you get comfortable, take a moment, like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in Jerusalem during the reign of Solomon. The good news, you're the king. The bad news, being the king mostly means everybody brings their problems to you before you've even had a chance to wash your face. Morning arrives loud, not birdsong loud. Work site loud. Stone scrapes on stone. Oxen snort. Men cough up the previous day's dust. Somewhere nearby, a foreman is already yelling with the cracked, heroic determination of a man who has accepted that his entire life is now one long argument with masonry. The air is dry enough to chap your lips before breakfast. It carries cedar shavings, fresh-cut timber, hot rope, sweat, lamp smoke, and that chalky mineral smell from blocks of quarried stone baking in the sun. You step outside, and the heat lands on you immediately, heavy and personal, like the sky has taken offense. This is not a tidy little devotional tableau. This is a massive public works nightmare with sacred branding. Everywhere you look, men are hauling, lifting, chiseling, levering, tying, measuring, dragging, and swearing in ways they would absolutely insist were not swearing. The temple rises by inches. Painful, expensive, splinter-filled inches. Cedar logs from Lebanon sit stacked in fragrant piles, oozing resin in the heat. Stone blocks lie everywhere like sleeping giants, each one waiting for 20 exhausted men to move it 3 feet and ruin their backs forever. Your sandals crunch over grit. Fine dust coats your hem. It gets into your nose, your mouth, your eyelashes, your food, your soul. By midday, everybody on site looks lightly breaded. And because you are Solomon, son of David, builder king, the man with the grand holy vision, nobody dares present this as simple chaos. They present it as progress, very reverent progress. Progress with ledgers. A steward bows and starts listing quantities before you're fully awake. Timber shipments, bronze fittings, tool repairs, worker rations, delays, more delays. The sort of delays delivered in a careful voice that means something has gone wrong and several people are hoping it becomes your emotional problem instead of theirs. You walk the perimeter and try to look regal. Regal is difficult when your robe is already sticking to your back. Men pause when you pass. They lower their heads. Then they go right back to grunting under impossible weights because reverence is lovely, but that block. Another stumbles by with tools, all elbows and dust and determination. Even the shade is disappointing. smells like old wood, sweat-soaked cloth, and feet. Your officials keep trying to reassure you. The work continues. The schedule can be recovered. Morale is manageable. Extra guards have been posted. More lamps can be lit. Offerings can be made. Orders can be given with greater force, as though a stern enough memo might frighten away whatever has been roaming the site at night like a cosmic vandal. Then one of the labor overseers asks for a private audience, and suddenly the whole thing sours. He does not come in swaggering. He comes in looking like a man who has not slept and would rather report tax fraud than say what he's about to say. His hands keep worrying at each other. Cedar dust clings to his beard. His tunic is stiff with sweat. He tells you the men are frightened. Not lazy, frightened. Something has been visiting after sundown. Not stealing carts, not snapping ropes, not merely making a nuisance of itself, which would almost be refreshing. This thing leaves workers weak by morning, drained, pale, shaking. One family claims their boy returns from the site each evening looking smaller, like the night itself has been taking bites out of him. That is when the construction noise outside starts to feel different. Still loud, still hot, still ordinary on the surface. But now every hammer strike sounds like men trying to work faster than sunset. Every pile of stone feels temporary, as though darkness might stroll in later and undo it for fun. The whole site has the tense, overbright energy of people pretending everything is normal, because admitting otherwise would cause immediate collective screaming. And you are Solomon, wise king, judge of Israel, master of proverbs, builder of the holy house. Wonderful titles, gorgeous titles. Completely useless when your workforce believes the night shift is being run by invisible monsters. So you stand there in the heat, cedar on the wind, dust on your tongue, listening to the city breathe around this rising temple. Jerusalem hums beyond the worksite walls with ovens, animals, traders, cooking fires, and household arguments. But here, at the center of your grand project, a strange pressure is building, because stone you can measure, timber you can count, labor you can command. But something unseen has entered the job site, and it does not care about your schedule, your guards, or your crown. But the work site still stinks of sweat, copper, and panic, because one demon is never just one demon. By late afternoon, the heat has gone from cruel to intimate. It clings to your neck. Your robe sticks under your arms. Dust has formed a permanent treaty with your skin. A runner appears at the edge of the yard, panting hard enough to suggest either terrible news or very poor athletic planning. He falls to one knee and blurts out that a master workman's boy is failing. Not slowly. Not in the ordinary way children get sick after bad water, spoiled grain, or that one cousin who insists his cough is nothing. This is stranger. The boy goes out in the morning, carries water, sorts tools, runs messages, does all the small miserable jobs assigned to the young. By evening he comes home white-lipped, weak-kneed, and so hungry he shakes. Then he eats, sleeps, and wakes no better. You go to the family's quarters because at this point you are the king of Israel, and also, apparently, landlord of a haunted labor camp. The place is cramped, low-roofed, and warmer inside than outside, which feels rude. Smoke from a cook fire hangs under the rafters. There is stale bread on a board, a cracked water jar in the corner, and bedding that looks like it was stuffed with straw, grit, and old disappointment. The smell hits first: sweat, lamp oil, damp wool, and the sour tang of sickness. The boy is there on a mat. He's younger than you expected. Thin arms, big eyes, knees like knots in rope. He tries to sit when you enter, because even collapsing children know you're the king, but he can barely manage it. His father hushes him and presses him back down. You crouch beside him and see the worst part. He doesn't look feverish. He looks emptied. Not the red-faced misery of infection. Not the greenish regret of bad food. This is different. His skin has that waxy, used-up look, like somebody wrung the day out of him and forgot to put it back. He swallows hard when he sees the bread. The father speaks too fast, the way people do when fear has been rehearsing the speech all day. Each evening, just before sunset, the boy feels it coming. A chill first, then a heaviness in his limbs, then something presses on him. Not a hand, not a body. More like the air itself turns mean. It takes from him. That is the only way he can say it. It takes. The mother sits nearby with both hands twisted in her tunic. Her face is blotchy from crying. She keeps glancing toward the doorway, as if expecting the thing to stroll in early, maybe wipe its feet, maybe ask whether dinner is ready. You ask the boy what he saw. He licks cracked lips. His voice is thin. A shape comes at dusk, he says. Sometimes from the corner, sometimes from the doorway. Sometimes he notices it first in the shadow on the wall, moving wrong. It leans over him. It drinks his strength through his right thumb. You look at the thumb. There is nothing dramatic there. No chunk missing. No blood all over the bedding. Just a strange tenderness at the nail and a faint discoloration, as if something has been feeding in a way no sane creature should. Ancient evil, apparently, has the bedside manner of a mosquito designed by a lunatic. The boy says he feels it pulling from inside him. That lands in the room like a dropped stone. Even the father, who has probably seen men crushed by timber and split open by quarry accidents, goes pale all over again. A labor camp can handle broken bones. It understands infected cuts. It knows what to do with heat stroke, snake bite, and the occasional idiot who tests whether lifting with his back is truly a bad idea. But this is a management issue from hell. You ask why the guards did nothing. The father laughs once, and there is no joy in it. Guards heard the boy cry out 2 nights ago. They rushed in with spears. They found the lamp sputtering, the room freezing, and the child shivering so hard his teeth knocked together. Nothing else. No intruder, no open window, no footprints. Just a smell like wet ash and old blood. Excellent. A demon with no body, a schedule, and opinions about children's fingers. You stay until sundown because there is a moment in kingship when dignity leaves the room and practical insanity takes over. You station servants outside. You order lamps lit, more lamps than any one family should reasonably own. The room glows like a fire hazard. Shadows retreat into corners and somehow look smug about it. The boy lies still, eyes huge. His mother sits beside him with one hand on his shoulder. His father grips a tool handle like it might become a weapon through force of hope alone. You stand near the wall, listening as evening lowers itself over the camp. Outside, the work site changes pitch. Day noises fade in layers. First, the heavy hauling stops, then the chisels, then the foremen with their permanent shouting injuries. The city beyond murmurs with supper sounds, bowls, goats, low talk, babies objecting to existence. A dog barks. Someone drops something metal. The dusk thickens. The room turns cold. Not pleasant cool. Not merciful relief. This cold feels invasive, like a wet hand sliding down the back of your neck. The lamps hiss. One flickers blue at the edge. The boy gasps and grabs his own hand. Then you see it. At first, it is just a thickening in the air near the doorway, a stain in the light, a shape with edges that refuse to stay put. It stretches upward, long and wrong, lean as famine. Its face is there and not there, with eyes that catch the lamp flame like oil on black water. When it smiles, your stomach goes hard. Because it has teeth. Of course it has teeth. It bends over the child with the brisk confidence of a creature that has done this before, and every person in the room freezes for one awful heartbeat. The father makes a sound deep in his chest and lunges. His tool handle passes through the thing like smoke passing through smoke. The demon does not even bother looking at him. It takes the boy's right hand. The child cries out. His body arches. The room smells suddenly metallic, sharp and bitter, like hot bronze and something spoiled. You feel the hair rise along your arms. The lamps gutter all at once, every flame stooping low like they too would rather not be here. You shout, and the guards rush in. Very brave, very armed, entirely useless. One thrusts a spear, another swings a club. A third nearly smashes the water jar in what I assume was a tactical decision known only to himself. The blows meet air, wall, bedding, and each other. The demon barely shifts. It keeps drawing from the child through the thumb, thin and obscene, as if sipping the last of a drink through a reed. Then it notices you. The eyes lift, the smile widens, and it is not afraid. That is the worst thing in the room. Not the cold, not the boy's cry, not the mother collapsing against the wall with both hands over her mouth. It is the simple fact that your crown means absolutely nothing to this thing. You are Solomon, son of David, king over men, and this creature looks at you the way a rat looks at furniture. Then, with a sound like breath pulled backward, it lets go. The boy slumps, limp and trembling. The shadow peels itself away from him and rises toward the ceiling. For one stupid instant you think it may attack. Instead, it twists, narrows, and slips into the dark gap above the lintel, leaving behind that ashen blood smell and a room full of people trying very hard not to scream in front of royalty. The father falls beside the mat. The mother clutches the child and sobs into his hair. One guard is sweating so violently he looks freshly baptized. Another keeps gripping and re-gripping his spear, offended on a spiritual level that he has just lost a fight to fog. The boy is alive, but he is weaker than before. You can see it immediately. Whatever visited him did not slash, bite, or bruise in any way your physicians can discuss with confidence. It fed, cleanly, efficiently, like an accountant with fangs. You leave after ordering the family watched through the night, and Jerusalem feels different under the stars. The palace courtyards are still polished, the cedar beams still smell expensive. Water still trickles in the basins. Servants still move softly with trays and lamps. But now all of it seems flimsy, decorative. Your kingdom has become one of those rich houses with excellent drapery and a raccoon in the walls. You sleep badly. Near dawn, when the air is coolest and your body has finally stopped arguing with the mattress, something changes. A brightness enters the room before anyone opens the door. Not sunrise. This light is concentrated, deliberate, almost edged. It pours into the chamber like polished metal catching fire, and you sit up with your heart trying to exit through your ribs. The air smells suddenly clean, not perfumed, clean, like rain on stone, like cedar cut fresh, like the world after smoke has blown away. A figure stands there, tall, terrible, calm. No servant announces him. No guard dares interrupt. He is simply present, and the room responds the way flesh responds to lightning. Your skin prickles. Your mouth goes dry. All the little palace noises seem to pull back and wait. In his hand is a ring, small enough to sit on a finger, bright enough to make your eyes water when it turns. The seal bears a sign cut into it, precise and hard, no ornament wasted. It does not look decorative. It looks functional, which is somehow more unnerving. Like heaven has sent you a tool from the least friendly workshop imaginable. The messenger gives it to you. No long speech, no embroidered ceremony. The meaning arrives with the object itself. Take this. Use it. The creature that drinks the child can be subdued by this sign. With it, you can command the spirits that do harm. Without it, you're just standing in a room with a crown while shadows commit crimes. You take the ring, and the metal feels warm. Not hot, alive warm. That is not a comforting sensation in jewelry. The figure is gone as suddenly as he appeared. One moment, the light fills the chamber. The next, it thins into ordinary mourning. Palace servants, who have wisely spent this entire event pretending not to witness anything above their pay grade, creep back into motion. Somewhere outside, a rooster makes a noise like broken pottery. You look at the ring, part royal seal, part divine pest control. If this works, it will be the strangest promotion any king has ever received. By evening, you are back in the labor camp, and nobody is pretending anymore. Word has spread. Of course it has. News travels through workers faster than lice through a blanket. Men pause when you pass. Women stand in doorways with folded arms and worried mouths. Children are dragged indoors before dark. Lamps bloom all over the camp, weak circles of yellow against the deepening dusk. The boy's family has cleaned the room as best they can, which is touching, but no amount of sweeping can make a demon appointment feel respectable. Fresh oil burns in the lamps. A bowl of water waits nearby. The father is pale with determination. The mother looks as if she has spent the entire day bargaining with heaven, fate, and possibly the furniture. The boy sees you and tries to be brave. That is somehow worse than if he cried. You tell the others to stay back when it comes. Nobody likes that plan. Everybody hates that plan. But there comes a point where too many panicking adults in one low room becomes less a defense strategy and more a festival of accidental elbowing. So you wait. Dusk lowers itself again over Jerusalem. A breeze moves through the camp, carrying dung smoke, baked earth, sweat, and lentils. From the temple site comes the smell of stone still releasing the day's heat. Somewhere beyond the huts, a donkey complains to the universe. Then the cold arrives. The boy flinches before anyone else feels it. His right hand jerks against the blanket. The lamps bend and sputter. A stain gathers near the wall, taller and darker, drawing itself upward like spilled ink discovering ambition. There it is, leaner tonight, sharper, confident. It glides toward the child without hurry, because predators who have never been stopped develop terrible manners. Its mouth stretches in that awful smile. Its fingers, if fingers is even the word, reach for the boy's hand. You step in. Your own pulse is pounding so hard you can hear it in your ears. The ring feels heavy for something so small. You thrust your hand forward and press the seal toward the creature with all the authority you can gather, kingly and otherwise. The change is immediate. The demon recoils as though struck in the face by a sunbeam sharpened into iron. A sound rips out of it, high and furious, part shriek, part hiss, part somebody tearing wet leather. The room fills with a stench so foul your eyes water. Sulphur, rot, and the inside of a tomb left open in summer. The father gags. One guard, posted at the door, turns his head and very nearly loses his dignity into the courtyard. The demon writhes back from your hand. Its shape buckles. Those oily eyes flare wide, no longer amused, and for the first time there is something deeply satisfying in the room. Fear. Not yours, its. You press the ring against it. The seal touches whatever passes for its chest, and there is a flash. Not a huge theatrical explosion. Nothing convenient. Just a hard, white burst, and a mark impressed into the thing like authority stamped onto rebellion. The creature convulses. The walls shudder. The lamps go tall. Then it drops. Not gracefully. It collapses to the floor in a fold of shadow and limbs, pinned not by rope or chain, but by command. The room is suddenly louder than before, because everyone starts breathing again at once. You tell it to speak. Its head lifts slowly. The face is uglier now that it cannot posture. Thin mouth, hollow cheeks, eyes like burned holes in cloth. When it answers, the voice comes from everywhere, wrong at once, near your ear and far across the room. It gives its name, or rather, something that functions as one among beings no parent would ever willingly introduce. It says it is a spirit who feeds on the life of children. It haunts the twilight hours. It slips into houses, especially where fatigue, fear, and poor lighting have already done half its work for it. It drinks through the right thumb, because evil, apparently, is not only vicious, but weirdly specific. The mother makes a terrible sound and clutches the boy closer. You ask, why this child? The demon sneers. Because he was available. Because he was young. Because his father worked late and the household was tired. Because night after night nobody could stop it. A bully, then. Ancient, supernatural, and somehow exactly like every schoolyard creep with less acne and more damnation. You demand to know by what power it can be broken. This part it hates. The thing twists under the seal and spits that it is thwarted by the holy name, by the sign impressed upon it, by the authority carried in this ring. It says there is no pleasure in admitting it. It says your command burns. It says there are others stronger than itself who will not submit so easily. That last part hangs in the air. Because there it is. The first crack in the wall. The first disgusting little window into a much larger infestation. One demon was not the problem. One demon was customer service. You order it to stop harming the child. It snarls, but obedience clamps down like a trap. The thing cannot refuse. You feel that fact through the ring, and it is strange enough to make your stomach turn. Commanding men is familiar. Men obey or don't, and then taxes, punishments, speeches, and all the usual royal furniture come into play. This is different. This is giving orders to something that should not fit inside the category of subordinate at all. You tell it to follow you. Its whole form shudders with hatred, but it rises. Bound, marked, furious. The father stares as if his brain has simply clocked out for the evening. The mother weeps into both hands, half from relief and half because a demon is now standing obediently in her house, which is not a sentence anyone wants in family history. Outside, the camp sees you emerge. You first, ring raised, guards behind, and after you, that shadow thing moving under compulsion like a dog dragged on an invisible leash. People stumble backward. Somebody drops a lamp. Someone else starts praying so fast the words collide with each other. You walk the lane between huts with a demon at your heels. It is, without question, the oddest royal procession Jerusalem has hosted all week. Men gape, women pull children close. The smell of evening meals mixes with fear so thick you could spread it on bread. Lentil stew, ash, sweat, dung, lamp smoke, terror. The whole camp watches as you lead the thing toward the palace, past the work site where stones wait in the dusk, like huge crouching witnesses. And now the temple project looks different. Not safer. Not yet. But changed. Because for the first time, the thing in the dark has a name. It has been stopped. It has been made to answer. Your hand still tingles from the ring. Your pulse has not fully settled. The demon walks behind you in miserable obedience, and every step says the same impossible thing. Something from below has been forced to listen. But the night is young, and this captive shadow has already hissed about others. 3 days pass. Nothing improves. Your palace still smells of cedar, hot stone, and lamp oil. But now there is a fourth note underneath it all. Demon. Not a single clean odor, unfortunately. More a rotating blend of wet ash, scorched hair, old tomb, and whatever leaks out of a nightmare when you force it through a doorway. You have it brought into the throne room at dawn. That sentence alone should earn you hazard pay. Servants line the walls pretending not to look directly at the thing. Guards stand stiff with spears they now know are mostly decorative in this line of work. Scribes sit with tablets and ink trying to look professional while a bound spirit crouches on polished floor tiles and hisses at furniture. Your throne room has become the world's most cursed bureaucracy. You sit under carved wood and hammered gold, while a demon, still stamped by the ring, kneels before you like an offended criminal at a very holy tax audit. Sunlight pushes through the high windows. Dust turns in the beams. The creature's outline trembles at the edges, as if its body can't commit to existing all the way. You tell it to speak clearly. It hates the request so much that this alone becomes enjoyable. It gives its name again, slower this time, the syllables scraping the room like broken pottery. Then it tells you its business. It lurks at evening. It drinks vigor from the young. It fattens itself on weakness, especially where households are frightened, neglected, or exhausted. So, a specialist. Apparently, the Underworld has departments. The scribes glance at one another and keep writing. One man's hand shakes so badly he blots half a line. Another has gone pale around the lips, but is soldiering on because there is dignity in taking demon minutes, even when your soul would rather resign. You ask what frustrates it. It bares its teeth. The answer arrives like it was dragged out with hooks. The sign on the ring. The authority of the holy name. Certain angels. Certain invocations. It mutters one name with particular disgust, and even hearing it makes the room feel cleaner. That is useful. Humiliating for the demon. Useful for you. You ask whether there are others. It looks up then, and the smile comes back, thin and poisonous. Oh yes, it says. Others in the desert. Others in cities. Others in houses. Others in the air, in water at crossroads, near beds beside infants, in fevers, in arguments, in lust, in madness, in twisted limbs, in failing crops, in dreams that wake a man screaming with his own tunic stuck to his back. The room goes very still. Because suddenly, Every unexplained pain in the kingdom starts feeling like it may have filed paperwork. You command the spirit to bring another of its kind. The demon recoils at that, not from inability, from spite. It would love, you sense, to keep this little network private. Evil does not enjoy transparency. It prefers dark corners, half-heard rumors, and people saying, "It's probably nothing," right before everything catches fire. But the ring bites at its obedience, so it shrieks into the air. The sound is revolting. It starts high, drops low, and ends somewhere in the range of a donkey being strangled inside a copper jar. Servants flinch. A guard mutters something that is either a prayer or a complaint. The smell in the room worsens immediately, as if one demon has opened a window into worse demons. The second one arrives near noon. You do not see it enter in any normal way. One moment, the space near a pillar is empty. The next, it bulges, warps, and spills forward into shape. This one appears as a woman's outline twisted through with smoke, beautiful at first glance, and then wrong in every possible detail. Her neck is too long. Her fingers bend backward at the joints. Her hair moves when the air does not. She smiles at you like a knife in a silk sleeve. And then the ring flashes. Her smile vanishes. She drops to the floor with a scream that rattles the bronze basins. You command her to state her name, her work, and whom she harms. No flourishes, no speeches, just the facts. You have, after all, become a king with a supernatural intake process. She says she lies with men in dreams and leaves them hollow. That gets the room's attention in a new and deeply uncomfortable way. A scribe coughs into his fist and stares heroically at his tablet. One older counselor suddenly finds the far wall fascinating. You keep your face still, though inwardly you are taking in the absurdity that your royal duties now include interviewing seductive night terrors about workplace conduct. She preys on sleepers, she says, especially the lonely, especially the vain, especially men who are already halfway to foolish before she even arrives. She enters by delight, by fantasy, by craving. She leaves shame, weakness, confusion, and the sort of morning a person does not discuss over breakfast. A specialist again. The underworld, against all good taste, is very organized. You ask what masters her. She writhes before answering. Certain angels, certain names, certain prayers spoken with steadiness rather than panic. She loathes one particular seal. She loathes iron in some contexts. She loathes waking a man who suddenly remembers God before he remembers her. Interesting. Also revolting. But interesting. You keep going. Once you start, there is no reason to stop. The throne room becomes a queue. One spirit bound, questioned, dismissed to labor or confinement. Another dragged in. Another forced flat by the ring. Another coughing up a name, a specialty, a favorite cruelty. And then, with maximum resentment, the thing that sends it running. By the third day, the palace routine has changed. Breakfast still arrives. Bread, figs, cheese, watered wine. Nothing dramatic there, except that you are now eating while hearing distant shrieks from the receiving chamber. A king can get used to almost anything, apparently, even demons screaming before noon. Outside the windows, Jerusalem goes on. Goats complain. Merchants shout. Wheels creak over stone. Children run where they shouldn't. Someone somewhere is always hammering something. But inside the palace, your court has become less politics and more infernal customer service desk. Next comes a squat, red-eyed thing with shoulders like a mule and skin the color of overripe bruises. It says it causes throat afflictions. very specific, very proud of itself. It perches on chests at night and presses until breath shortens and voices rasp. It delights in swollen glands, choking fits, coughs that tear the ribs, and that horrible wet sound people make when they cannot clear what is in their lungs. It boasts about children gasping and old men turning blue in their sleep. The guards hate this one, not because it is strongest, because it is smug. You ask what undoes it. It spits and says a certain herb burned in smoke, bitter roots crushed with oil, an angel whose name lands sharp in the room like a drawn blade. It snarls each answer as if every confession is a tooth being pulled. One by one, they come apart like badly sewn sacks. A long-limbed spirit says it twists backs, bends spines, knots tendons, and leaves people waking crooked. It likes women at grinding stones, and men carrying loads, the already tired, the already strained. It slips into joints and pulls. It leans on shoulders until one side rises forever. It adores limps. You look down the line of labourers waiting outside the hall and feel your jaw tighten. Because suddenly, the bent woman in the lower market and the stonemason, with one hip higher than the other, no longer look like random misery. The world is filling with names. This demon says it fears a specific star, not all stars. One. You nearly laugh at the sheer pettiness of creation. Imagine being an ancient force of malice and getting absolutely ruined every year because one particular light appears in the sky. Cosmic schedule conflict. Very embarrassing. The scribes write that down too. Another arrives black as furnace soot, with fingernails like fish hooks and a smell that could strip paint off cedar. This one causes headaches. Not the little ordinary kind from bad wine or missing breakfast. No. It boasts of splitting pain behind the eyes, pounding temples, nausea, dizziness, blinding flashes, and those long, miserable days when a person hates light, sound, and all known relatives. You ask where it enters. Through anger, it says. Through heat, through too much sun. Through grief, left to rot. Through households where everyone is already shouting. It likes noisy rooms and cramped quarters. It likes fever. It likes people who say, "I'm fine," while holding their own skull like it might come off in their hands. And its weakness. A leaf, a root, a spoken name, a particular angel, a prayer at sunrise. The demon says it with the sulk of an employee forced to list office safety violations. One spirit claims the stars themselves are its map. This one is lean and glittering in a horrible way, with eyes like chips of ice and a voice that clicks between words. It names the zodiac signs as if reciting districts in a kingdom. Under one sign it stirs lust. Under another it kindles quarrels. Under another it sends disease into the belly. Under another it bends a man toward delusion, so he sees insult where there is none, and danger in his own household shadows. Now the court is listening differently. Even the most skeptical men have stopped wearing their skeptical faces. Those are gone, replaced by the expression everyone gets when they realize the universe contains way too many moving parts and several of them hate us personally. You make the spirit go sign by sign. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, on and on, each one linked to a kind of mischief, a preferred victim, a season of trouble. The demon practically preens while listing them, like a travel agent from hell pitching holiday packages nobody asked for. Then you ask the obvious question. How are you thwarted? The preening ends. It mutters about opposing angels set over the same heavens, about the names spoken against it, about righteous living, which it says with the same disgust people reserve for spoiled milk, about times and seasons not belonging to it after all, about lights greater than itself. You lean back on the throne and realize this has become your method. Name, specialty, victims, weakness. You are not just subduing monsters, you are making them inventory themselves. And they hate it. That part is delightful. Some are hideous from the beginning. Others are worse because they look almost normal. One comes in wearing the shape of a young man, handsome enough to be trusted for exactly 3 disastrous minutes. Then it grins, and the mouth opens too far. The tongue is dark. The teeth are arranged with creative liberties no living dentist would defend. It says it sows false desire, not ordinary attraction. That would be too simple. It inflames the appetite that strips judgment first. It turns curiosity sticky. It sweetens betrayal. It whispers in festivals, banquets, warm rooms after wine, private corners, chance meetings, long glances. It thrives where someone says, "No one will know," which is usually the opening line to a catastrophe. This one loathes fasting, of all the humiliating defeats. A thing of lust, ancient and corrupt, brought low because somebody skipped lunch and prayed instead. It says this with seething contempt. One of the younger scribes nearly smiles before catching himself and becoming serious again. Another spirit limps in with one eye larger than the other and a voice like pebbles being chewed. It causes envy. That sounds small until it starts talking. It slides into brothers, business partners, neighbors, wives, princes, craftsmen, cousins, old friends. It makes a man's chest go hot when another man's field yields better grain. It turns admiration sour. It makes people count blessings like debts and measure joy with a ruler they only use on other people. It starts with glances. It ends with blood. This one, too, has weaknesses. Contentment infuriates it. Gratitude nauseates it. Honest praise of another person burns like acid. It says all this while clawing at the floor, and for a moment your entire royal court is watching a demon throw a tantrum because someone said, "Good for him." Remarkable. The line outside never seems to shorten. You begin seeing patterns in the waiting forms, though patterns sounds too tidy for what is basically a parade of biological mistakes and moral sewage. Some crawl, some hover, some limp. Some arrive as wind and condense unwillingly into shape. One appears as a bundle of rags until the rags stand up. Another comes in as a dog and then unfolds into something with human hands. A servant faints during that one. Reasonable response. You have basins brought in because several demons produce odors that should legally require ventilation. Sulfur, rot, stagnant water, charred bone, mildew, blood left in heat, dead fish, wet wool, and that sweet, sickly note of infection from a wound nobody cleaned because nobody wanted to look at it. You learn to identify certain kinds of evil by smell alone. That is not knowledge anyone dreams of gaining. At midday, one spirit arrives with a neck ringed in bruises it does not appear to mind. This one kills children in the cradle. No dark humor now, just disgust. It speaks proudly of soft throats, interrupted breath, mothers waking too late, fathers searching for explanations because no mark is visible enough, no wound large enough, no answer satisfying enough. It likes houses where grief has already lived. It likes cold corners and nights when everyone is too tired to keep vigil. The room feels colder just hearing it. Several guards grip their spear shafts hard enough to whiten the knuckles. One older official closes his eyes. Somewhere in the back, a servant is quietly crying. You ask what breaks it. It chokes out the answer because the ring demands it. The protection of angels, vigil, prayer, holy names at the bedside, certain inscriptions, certain acts of mercy. It hates households that bless their children. It hates lamps kept burning. It hates watchfulness. You do not let it keep talking after that. Some things can answer and then be silent. Later comes one that causes madness. This one is the worst to watch because its own shape keeps changing mid-sentence. Child, old man, soldier, woman, animal, smoke, broken again into a long grin and hands. It boasts of whispering confusion until a person trusts the wrong voice. It stirs hearing where there is no speaker, terror where there is no threat, certainty where there should be doubt. It can make a man tear his clothes, strike his kin, flee his house, sleep among tombs, laugh at funerals, or tremble in broad daylight as if wolves stand all around him. The court has stopped eating by this point. Even dried figs feel too cheerful. You ask its weakness. It does not want to tell you. You make it. Authority, holy names, angels, prayer, steadfastness, and communities that refuse to abandon the afflicted. Isolation feeds it. Mercy starves it. It says this like poison. There it is again. Not just rituals, not just names. Human faithfulness itself, irritating the underworld. By evening, the palace smells of sweat, fear, hot wax, and too many bodies in enclosed space. Sand sticks to damp sandals. Ink dries on scribes' fingers. Guards roll their shoulders between sessions. Even you feel the ache of sitting upright through hours of horror, one elbow on carved wood, listening to things with no proper lungs describe all the ways they enjoy ruining ordinary lives. And still they come. One causes skin eruptions, another stomach cramping, another muteness, another epilepsy, or something close enough that everyone in the room understands the picture when it jerks and foams to demonstrate. Another says it lurks in accidents at wells, another in desert mirages, another in sudden falls from roofs because apparently even gravity has freelance contractors. You ask each one the same questions: name, work, victims, weakness. It becomes almost rhythmic, not relaxing. Absolutely not, but familiar. The ring glows, the demon writhes, the scribe writes. A guard swallows hard. A counselor looks increasingly like a man reconsidering all previous assumptions about reality. Then the spirit, forced and furious, gives up the one thing it most wants hidden: how to stop it. By the seventh day, even the demons know the routine. One enters already scowling, like a criminal called back to the same unpleasant office for repeat processing. It blurts half its crimes before you ask, perhaps hoping to get this over with faster. You have become impossibly efficient at underworld administration. There is something almost comical about that. A king on a throne, gold glinting, courtiers in linen, incense drifting through the hall. And in front of you, a horned abomination complaining that a medicinal plant and the correct angel make its job harder. It would be funny anywhere else. Here it is, merely your Tuesday. Not all of them are brave. One small shriveled spirit trembles so hard its teeth chatter before you even speak. It says it causes petty theft, little betrayals, snatching from market stalls, hidden weights, diluted wine, lies over small sums, all the grimy, low-level meanness that makes cities feel sticky. It sounds almost embarrassed, as though even among demons this is entry-level nonsense. You nearly pity it. Nearly. Its weakness is honesty practiced repeatedly. Imagine being an agent of corruption and getting absolutely flattened because a fish seller decides, for once, not to cheat on the measure. Ancient wickedness thwarted by accurate counting. There is hope for the world after all. Then comes a towering one. This creature fills the end of the hall like storm cloud packed into muscle. Bronze dark skin, beard of writhing shadow, eyes burning red. Its voice hits the chest before the ear. It claims authority over rebellion, war frenzy, bloodlust, the heat that rises in crowds when one insult becomes 10 dead men by sunset. Finally, a manager. This one does not brag about sneaking into bedrooms. It talks about armies. It fans the pride of kings, the rashness of captains, the humiliations that ferment into campaigns. It loves drums. It loves banners. It loves speeches men cheer before losing sons to them. It sits in councils and pushes one more reckless decision across the table. A less funny demon. Though still, because the universe enjoys irony, it admits it can be checked by wisdom, restraint, and the counsel of the righteous. Nothing glamorous. No flaming spear from heaven at first mention. Just patience, humility, and refusing to get swept up by your own importance. The giant says this, like each word tastes foul. You hold its gaze a little longer than the others. Then you send it away in chains of command, invisible to everyone except the shudder in the air. By now your scribes have tablets stacked in rows. Names, functions, hours, signs, vulnerabilities. The floor near their benches is littered with reed scraps, dropped wax, and enough nervous sweat to float a small boat. One man has developed a twitch in his left eyelid that does not leave for days. Another has started insisting on extra lamp oil at his desk. Nobody laughs at him. At night, you return to your chambers carrying the ring and a head full of filth. You wash your hands more than once. It does not help. The water goes cloudy with dust and palace life, but the feeling remains, as though speaking with that many horrors leaves a residue no basin can reach. You lie down on linen and wool, under cedar beams and worked stone, in a room guarded by men and lit by clean lamps, and still you find yourself listening for breathing that isn't human. Morning comes. Back to court. More names, more diseases, more appetites, more weaknesses. Slowly, a picture forms. Not tidy, not reassuring, but clearer. Every demon loves concealment. Every one of them thrives on confusion, fear, vanity, neglect, excess, cruelty, despair, isolation, or plain old human stupidity. They swagger in the dark. They puff up in rumor. They sound enormous until forced to say in front of everybody exactly what sends them scrambling. That is what the ring keeps doing. It drags secrets into daylight and makes evil admit it has limits. And once you know a thing's name, once you know what it feeds on and what strips it of power, the throne room changes again. It no longer feels like a place where nightmares simply arrive. It feels like a workshop, a grim one, a foul-smelling one, but a workshop all the same. A place where the hidden gets catalogued, a place where terror gets cross-examined, a place where one bound demon after another, under protest and with maximum bitterness, hands over the keys to its own undoing. But names alone are not enough forever. The temple still rises slowly. Stones still need moving. Timber still needs cutting. The city is still full of things that creep, tempt, infect, bend, and whisper. And after days of interrogation, with the floor sticky from wax and the air thick with incense trying heroically to defeat the smell of hell, a worse and stranger thought begins to settle over the court. If these creatures can be forced to answer, perhaps they can be forced to work. But once you learn their names and talents, it becomes very tempting to keep asking what else they can do. That temptation follows you out of the throne room and onto the Temple Mount. The sun is brutal by mid-morning. Heat bounces off pale stone and climbs your legs through your sandals. Cedar dust hangs in the air, fine as flour and twice as irritating, sticking to sweat on your neck until you feel breaded like a sacrificial cutlet. All around you, the work grinds on. Masons shout, oxen strain, ropes groan. Men with bare shoulders carry tools, wedges, mallets, baskets, and complaints. Hammer blows ring off dressed stone in a rhythm that would almost sound noble if not for the cursing, coughing, and occasional donkey noise from below. And now, into this holy construction chaos, you bring demons. It sounds terrible. The overseers are assembled when you arrive. Linen tunics darkened under the arms, tablets tucked against ribs, trying very hard to look like this is a normal administrative update. One of them bows with the expression of a man who expected labor shortages, maybe tax disputes, but not your new workforce comes from the abyss. You stand on the rise and look down over the site. Great blocks lie in ordered rows. Timber from Lebanon waits under shade cloth. Bronze fittings glint in the sun. Men move like ants around foundations and rising walls, all effort and dust and urgency. It is magnificent, really, in the same way a huge kitchen during festival preparation is magnificent right before something catches fire. The demons are brought forward under seal. Some come snarling, some come silent, some drag their feet with theatrical misery, as though being made useful is the greatest insult ever devised. One has to be hauled by unseen force because it keeps trying to flatten itself into smoke. Another appears in shape but not enthusiasm, which is fair because nobody enjoys mandatory public works. You can feel the whole site watching. Laborers pause with ropes in hand. Stonecutters stop mid-swing. Carpenters lean on adzes. Even the oxen seem to reconsider their life choices. Word has traveled, of course. Jerusalem is a city with ears. By now, everyone knows the palace has become a demon office, and now apparently the problem is spilling into infrastructure. You raise the ring. The nearest spirit buckles instantly. That gets everyone's attention in the useful way. You begin simply, a hauling task. Nothing elegant, nothing symbolic. Just a block so large it has already made 3 crews swear at one another and blame the measurements. The stone sits on rollers near the lower incline, broad and pale, and heavy enough to ruin a man's back and his descendants' opinions. You point. The demon stares at you with naked hatred. Then it puts its hands under the stone. Not metaphorical hands either. Thick, dark things with too many joints and nails like chipped iron. Muscles gather under skin that seems stitched from bad weather. It braces, hisses, and lifts. The block rises off the rollers with a grinding scrape that sends dust billowing around its legs. The workers step backward as one. Reasonable. A creature that yesterday boasted about strangling children is now doing the work of 12 exhausted men. It lurches forward under the weight, every step digging deep into the soil. Veins stand out along its neck, its teeth bare. The stone moves uphill. The silence lasts until one old mason mutters, "Well," that is all he says. But somehow it contains an entire theology of confusion. Soon, the experiment becomes policy. You assign tasks according to spiteful aptitude. The broad-shouldered ones haul. The long-fingered ones wedge into narrow spaces and lever stones into place. A wiry thing that once twisted human joints now bends bronze clamps with depressing precision. A smoke-thin spirit that used to creep through houses is ordered into ventilation shafts and inaccessible gaps, where it carries cords and clears debris while cursing in a language that sounds like boiling pitch. Productivity improves. Morale becomes stranger. It turns out demons are very strong, very fast, and absolutely furious about every minute of it. They do not enjoy your project. They do not appreciate sacred architecture. They do not care for load-bearing geometry, careful fitting, or the satisfaction of a flush seam. But under the seal, under command, under holy authority, they work. And they work well. That part bothers everyone. You can see it on the faces of the labor gangs. A man wipes his forehead and watches a bound spirit drag cedar beams across packed earth with the sort of speed normally associated with floodwater. Another mason stares as a demon lifts a corner block into alignment with the delicate precision of a jeweler setting a gem. Though a jeweler usually does not snarl and drip what smells like grave water. Sacred building by unclean hands. It sits wrong in the stomach. The site itself becomes a theatre of contradictions. Priests bless materials. Levites chant nearby. Incense drifts in faint threads from a provisional altar. And 10 cubits away, a horned abomination with ash-colored skin is carrying cut stone on one shoulder like a laborer from the pit. Holy place. Unholy workforce. Your kingdom has entered its weird contractor phase. By noon, the smell is unbelievable. Normally, the site carries the usual bouquet of construction misery. Cedar sap, fresh cut stone, sweat, rope fibers, damp clay, trampled earth, ox hide, and lunch left too long in the sun. Now add scorched hair, sulfur, stagnant marsh, tomb dust, mildew, wet dog, and one sharp metallic note like blood on hot bronze. Incense tries its best. It loses. A young worker nearly vomits into a basket of nails. Honestly, fair. One demon assigned to shaping foundation stones proves especially good at it. Of course it does. It spent who knows how long crushing ribs, bending limbs, and making life generally intolerable. Stone, by comparison, is just bone that gave up and became a mountain. The creature kneels over a block with a hammer and chisel, striking so precisely that chips fly in glittering arcs. Tap, tap, tap. Then one blow too hard on purpose. The corner splits. It turns its face up toward you and smiles. There it is. The attitude problem. You make it start again from a fresh block. Slowly, in front of everyone. The ring flashes once, and the thing folds over itself with a howl so offended it could curdle milk. Then it returns to work, each hit now careful, measured, exact. Workers nearby do not speak, but you can feel their satisfaction. Even demons apparently need supervision. A foreman approaches you with a face arranged into respectful panic. He wants to know whether the creatures may be trusted with cedar. A very sensible question. Cedar is expensive. Cedar is imported. Cedar is fragrant, beautiful, durable, and currently stacked in long, precious lengths under guarded awnings. You do not want some malice-soaked thing deciding to snap timber because it resents architecture. So you test them. A pair of spirits are brought to the woodyard. Both hate this immediately. Wood has life memory in it, resin smell, and old sunlight trapped in grain, and these things seem to dislike anything that still remembers being alive. You order them to lift, carry, and set the beams according to the markings laid out by the carpenters. They obey, reluctantly, vividly, with all the joy of men filling tax forms in the rain. The first beam goes up crooked because one demon tries to be clever. The carpenters yell. The demon grins. The ring answers. Suddenly the grin is gone, and the spirit is on its knees, forehead in sawdust, shaking like a dog that bit a chariot wheel. After that, the beam seats perfectly. Mortises align. Tenons slide where they should. The carpenter in charge, a man who has mistrusted everybody since birth, squints and nods once. High praise. Soon enough, the whole mount is divided into zones. Here the ordinary crews quarry and cut. There the demon gangs haul and lift. Over there the bronze workers shape fittings, while trying not to make eye contact with a creature from the underworld holding a lintel steady. Scribes move through it all with tablets tucked under arms, keeping records no one in their right mind would have predicted. Cedar lengths, stone counts, worker rotations, and under a separate column, infernal assignments. Your bureaucracy has adapted beautifully to the impossible. The demons hate being counted. That may be the funniest part. Each morning they are brought forth under guard and seal, sorted by task like the world's most cursed labor registry. This one to the upper retaining wall, that one to beam transport, the twisting one to metal clamps, the smoke one into the vent channels, the brute from yesterday who tried dropping a block on a mason accidentally, now reassigned to water hauling where the damage potential is lower, though the smell around the cisterns becomes deeply offensive. One of the palace scribes starts numbering them for convenience. An excellent decision for administration, an absolutely infuriating one for demons. Imagine being an ancient spirit of malice with a name that curdles air and makes camels restless, only to hear a tired official in dusty sandals say, "Put number 7 on the west incline." It strips the glamour right off. No wonder they hiss. The labourers develop habits quickly. At first, nobody wants to work near the demons. Men edge away. They cross themselves in whatever local fashion exists in their bones. They mutter holy names under breath. They grip tools harder. A few ask to be reassigned. One old quarryman flatly refuses until he watches a spirit drag a stone sled uphill by itself, then changes his mind with suspicious speed. Practicality wins. It usually does when your alternatives are heat stroke and hernia. Within days, men begin using the demons the way crews use dangerous oxen. Keep distance. Give clear commands through the overseer. Never stand downhill. Never trust silence. Never assume a thing is tired just because you are. And above all, do not insult it unless the ring is visible. This becomes known as sight safety. A mason named Hador, who has broken 2 toes and half his patience in the service of royal works, discovers that one bound spirit can hold a suspended block steady better than 6 men with poles. He hates this discovery. He uses it anyway. While checking alignment, he squints up and says, to no one in particular, "Lower it a finger's width." The demon lowers it. Perfectly. Hador grunts. Again. The demon obeys. By sunset, he is working with the thing like a man and a very evil pulley system. He still spits over his shoulder after every exchange, but the wall goes up straighter. Down near the cutting yard, another crew learns that a shriveled, red-eyed spirit with claws like pruning hooks can strip bark and rough-shape support timbers at astonishing speed. The problem is that it sings while working. Not words exactly. More a scraping chant that sounds like bones being sorted in a basket. The workers beg you to make it stop. You do. No one misses the music. And now we arrive at the part nobody talks about. Fear is one thing in a throne room. It is another in the open sun all day long, while you share a work site with what used to haunt your worst thoughts. Men grow used to oddities. Human beings are alarmingly adaptable. Give them 3 days and a lunch break, and they will normalize almost anything. That is not always a compliment. By the end of the first week, a laborer is shouting for a demon to shift a roller. A carpenter is snapping his fingers at one to bring a mallet. Somebody leaves a water jar too close to a bound spirit and complains when the clay comes back smelling faintly of sulfur. There is already grumbling about which entities are better for hauling and which are lazy, as though anyone should ever use that word about a creature of corruption under supernatural coercion. The ordinary starts swallowing the impossible. That should make you uneasy. It does. Because every so often, amid the shouting and dust and measurement cords, you catch the look on a demon's face. It isn't just rage. Rage is easy. This is colder, patient, hateful in a long-term way, the expression of something forced to stack stones for a house devoted to the god it cannot endure. You can almost hear the thoughts behind its eyes. I will remember this. A female spirit with backward-bending fingers is assigned to polishing cut surfaces and cleaning grit from join lines. She is exceptionally good. Too good. The finish she leaves is smooth enough to reflect light in pale, wavering bands. Workers begin avoiding their own reflections there because once or twice the image seemed delayed by a blink. You remove her from that duty. Not every efficiency is worth the atmosphere. One noon, during the worst heat, a hauling crew loses footing on the western ramp. The rollers slip. A block starts to turn. Men shout. Sand sprays. For one sharp second, it looks like 6 workers are about to be flattened into a cautionary proverb. A bound demon catches the stone. Just catches it. Both hands under the edge. Knees bent, spine bowed, feet driving grooves into the earth while the block hangs there trembling. The workers scramble clear. Dust wraps all of them in one choking cloud. When it settles, the men are alive, staring, and the demon is glaring at you as if saving them was personally degrading. You tell it to set the block down slowly. It does. Afterward, the crew cannot decide whether to thank God, fear the demon more, or go sit quietly behind some baskets until existence feels less ridiculous. One man does all 3. Good instinct. The stories spread through the city by evening. Of course they do. Jerusalem feasts on rumor the way goats feast on laundry. By supper, market women are describing horned labor gangs on the mount. By dusk, children are playing temple demons in alleys, which alarms their mothers and delights them. By full dark, somebody has already exaggerated the whole thing into a tale where you made 7,000 spirits build an entire courtyard before breakfast. People love details. Accuracy comes later. Pilgrims arriving in the city stop below the mount and stare upward. At first, all they see is scaffolding, rising walls, lines of men, animal teams, hanging pulleys, and dust. Then, one of the darker shapes on the ramp straightens too high, turns its head too far, and lifts a stone no human hips should survive. After that, the staring intensifies. A few fall to their knees. A few back away. One old man laughs until he wheezes, not from amusement, but from sheer disbelief. Fair enough. If you had traveled for days to honor the Lord and arrived just in time to watch a demon carry dressed limestone for the sanctuary, you might also need a moment. The priests are not comfortable. This may be the understatement of the century. They stand in clean linen at the edges of consecrated space, trying to preserve order while your new labor force drags itself through the middle distance like a theological nightmare. You can almost feel the objections forming in their throats. Unclean spirits, holy work, defilement, propriety, the sort of concerns usually absent from ordinary building plans. But the work is advancing. Walls rise, courses settle, foundations lock. Cedar frames take shape against the sky. What took men days now takes hours. What once required teams and rest rotations now moves under one sealed command. The house dedicated to God's name is climbing upward on the backs of beings that would rather poison children and whisper filth into sleeping ears. There is triumph in that. There is also a shiver. At times, you walk the length of the site simply to look. Sun on stone, chips underfoot, fresh cedar breathing out that sweet, sharp scent like mountains trapped in wood. Bronze flashing in corners, men wiping faces with forearms, demons laboring with expressions of concentrated hatred, ropes creaking, supervisors shouting counts, priests nearby with smoke and blessings. Above everything, the hard white sky of Jerusalem giving no opinion at all. It feels like standing inside an argument made of architecture. One afternoon, you pause near the upper courses where fitting stones are being seated. A hulking spirit braces a corner block while two masons check the line. One mason taps the edge with his mallet. "A little east," he says. The spirit does not move. He says it again, louder, still nothing. Then the demon turns its head and very deliberately smiles at him. Not a big smile. Worse than that. A small one. The kind that says it remembers everything ugly it has ever done and would enjoy resuming immediately. You step closer and raise the ring. The spirit jerks, snarls, and shifts the block east, exactly the right amount. The mason, to his credit, finishes the measurement with only a slight tremor in his hand. Later, he asks for a different assignment. You refuse. Not cruelly, just practically. Nobody gets through a project this large without unpleasant co-workers. These ones simply happen to be infernal. A stranger problem emerges after several weeks. The demons are not merely obeying. Some begin to anticipate commands. That should not feel as alarming as it does. A hauling spirit reaches for the next block before being told. A smoke thing slips into a narrow shaft and clears loose rubble because it already knows where the masons will need access. A broad-backed creature waits at the beamyard before dawn, sullen and ready, like a teamster who hates his employer but values punctuality. You do not like this improvement. It suggests a kind of learning, not repentance, absolutely not. Nothing so comforting, more like adaptation. Vermin learning the pantry schedule, predators mapping the fences. The site starts to feel efficient in the way a trap can feel efficient, all pieces snug and functioning, and one misplaced hand from blood. So you tighten command. More oversight, more direct supervision, more public use of the ring, more separation between human crews and spirit gangs. No demon works unobserved. No task proceeds without designated men present. No one speaks privately to them. No one accepts help offered outside command. No one, under any circumstance, starts thinking of this as normal. That last instruction is the hardest, because normal keeps trying to happen anyway. Workers start referring to individual spirits by nicknames. Shoulder, red eye, crooked hands, smoke neck. One gets called Old Sulphur after it sneezes sparks into a sand pile. Another becomes Beam Mouth because its jaw unhinges when lifting timber. The names are practical and insulting. The demons despise them. Good. Let dignity be the first thing they lose. Still, the discomfort never leaves. It just changes clothes. At dawn, you hear chanting and hammering with gulls somewhere beyond the hills, and think, for half a heartbeat, that this is a glorious project in smooth operation. Then a shriek cuts across the yard because one bound spirit touched a seal line and got reminded who owns this arrangement. Everybody flinches. The illusion shatters. Right. Of course. We are still building the Lord's house with conscripted nightmares. There is no elegant version of that. Near sunset, the western sky goes copper and red. Dust turns golden in the light. Men wash hands in basins gone grey with stone powder. Foremen count tools. Oxen are led away. The demons are gathered under watch one by one, dragged back from ramps and yards and unfinished chambers, sullen as thieves after a failed festival. The day's work stands behind them, walls taller than before, courses tighter, timbers set, passages cleared, foundations strengthened. Progress you can walk around and touch with your own hand. And there they stand, panting though they do not breathe like men, filthy with limestone dust, cedar splinters, mud, and the humiliation of having spent another day helping build what they hate. You look at the rising house, then at them. The whole thing is absurd, sacred, effective, disturbing, a victory with grit in its teeth. A kingdom can get used to almost anything. That may be its strength. It may also be a warning. Because once demons are hauling stones in daylight, once horrors are useful, once power starts solving problems faster than wisdom can object, the line between command and fascination begins to thin. And on a work site full of dust, noise, sweat, and bound malice, that line is easier to cross than anyone wants to admit, especially a king who has started to enjoy being obeyed. The lamps burn lower that night, and the room somehow gets stranger. You would think there might be a limit. There is not. The throne room has already hosted things with claws, smoke, bent limbs, bad attitudes, and faces like half-finished nightmares. Surely that should cover the category. Surely at some point the Underworld runs out of personnel. But no. Apparently, misery has departments. It has regional specialists. It has subcontractors. And this is the part where power stops feeling clean and starts feeling delicious. Because once you have forced one monster to kneel, you want to know what else is out there. So the court fills again. Torches hiss in their brackets. Oil smoke drifts under the cedar beams. Scribes flex cramped fingers over tablets. Guards stand very still with the expression of men who are reconsidering every career decision that led here. The ring sits heavy on your hand, and every time lamplight catches it, something in the room winces. You summon another. It arrives wrong. Not dramatic smoke and thunder wrong. Worse than that. It appears the way a bad thought appears, already present before you realize it. One heartbeat, the floor is empty. The next, there is a woman-shaped thing near the dais, tall and narrow, with hair hanging in ropes to her waist, and eyes too bright for a human face. Her skin has the color of milk left out too long. Several men look away immediately. Reasonable. She smiles at them, and that is worse. The smile is soft, familiar almost. The kind that belongs at a wedding feast, or in a doorway at dusk, or in exactly the memory that has ruined stronger men than these. Then she opens her mouth, and the illusion slips, because the teeth go back too far. You ask her name. She gives it like perfume, a spirit of desire, a night roamer. She glides through houses after dark, slipping along rooftops and courtyards, settling near sleeping men, stirring heat in the blood and nonsense in the mind. She boasts about feverish dreams, wrecked marriages, stupid decisions made under moonlight, and the sort of shame that arrives after sunrise looking for a place to sit. Basically, she is a one-woman disaster with excellent branding. The court listens in terrible silence. Nobody enjoys hearing temptation describe itself with professional pride. It feels too personal, too recognizable. A few of the younger attendants suddenly become fascinated by the floor. One old official mutters a prayer under his breath with all the urgency of a man slamming shutters before a storm. You demand her weakness. She hates that. All of them do. The boasting comes easy. The confession does not. Under the ring's pressure, she finally names what sends her fleeing. Certain names of angels, certain acts of purity, certain prayers spoken by people too exhausted and too honest to be impressed by her routine. She says it like someone being forced to admit she loses fights to grandmothers. The scribes write furiously. Another spirit follows, then another. The room starts to feel less like a royal court and more like the world's least relaxing museum tour. Each one is brought in, pinned in place, and made to explain which portion of human misery it has chosen as a hobby. Headaches, rage, falsehood, night terrors, lust, seizures, sudden weakness in the knees, delusions, rot in the gut, a wandering pain in the side that arrives without warning and refuses to leave. You sit there listening as every misery in the city apparently introduces itself. And the weirdness keeps escalating. One comes in shaped like a handsome young man. That lasts maybe 3 seconds. Then the face ripples as if somebody threw a pebble into a pond, and the beauty peels away. Underneath is something scaled and narrow with nostrils that flare sideways and eyes like wet black seeds. It can become what people want to see, it explains. A lover, a servant, a trustworthy traveller at the gate, a relative glimpsed by lamplight. It slips into familiarity the way a knife slips between ribs. Its special gift is deception. Of course it is. You have it show the court. At first, everyone objects. Loudly. Nobody wants a live demonstration from a shapeshifter in an enclosed room. But curiosity wins, because humans are, at heart, raccoons in nice fabric. So, the thing turns. It becomes an old priest, then a palace boy, then a soldier with a scar over one eye. Then, for one brief, hideous moment, it becomes one of the guards standing 10 feet away. The actual guard makes a sound no soldier wants to make in public. Something between a squeak and a swallowed cough. Half the room reaches for weapons. The thing grins with borrowed teeth. You stop the performance there. Plenty. You ask what it does once admitted into a household. Lies, mostly. Whispering. Misdirecting. Turning people against one another with just enough truth to keep the poison believable. This spirit does not need to smash doors or drain blood. It just nudges. A suspicion here. A false sighting there. A voice in the dark that sounds almost right. By morning, brothers are quarreling. Husbands are accusing wives. And somebody has made a stupid vow based on information provided by a walking costume change. Ancient catfishing, but with eternal consequences. The next one smells like low tide and dead shellfish. Before you even see it, the odor reaches the dais. Salt, rotting weed, fish slime, damp sand, and that particular ranknote harbours get in summer when the sun warms everything nobody buried properly. Courtiers cover their noses. One scribe physically leans back while still trying to write. The lamps flutter as though the room itself objects. Then the sea spirit rises from the floor like a wet stain learning posture. Its body never quite settles. You keep seeing different things. A woman's shoulders slick with water. The mouth of an eel. Hair floating though there is no wind. Fingers webbed thin as torn cloth. The belly of a fish. The eyes of something that has stared upward from deep black water and learned to hate the moon. You have had enough immediately. Unfortunately, enough is not an option. It tells you where it works. Coasts, rivers, ferry crossings, reeds at the edge of ponds where children should not play after dusk. It lures, it tangles, it pulls. Sometimes it merely terrifies. Sometimes it drags people into water thick with silt where panic does the rest. Sailors hear singing. Fishermen see a shape where no shape should be. Travelers trying to ford a stream at twilight suddenly feel hands around their calves. Nobody in the room enjoys drinking water after this. The spirit also claims influence over storms, or at least over the panic storms produce. Nets tearing, boats swamping, cargo lost, men pitching overboard into dark waves while everyone else shouts uselessly. It takes obvious pleasure in maritime inconvenience, which is a very niche career path, but apparently a thriving one. You ask what breaks its power. Iron, certain prayers, certain names, vigilance at the water's edge, refusal to follow voices after dark. It spits each answer like seawater from a broken tooth. A palace attendant who grew up inland whispers, "I am never going near the coast." Smart. The night grows longer, and your catalogue gets worse. One star demon enters with almost no shape at all. At first, you think the lamps are failing. The room dims around the edges. Shadows stretch where they should not. Then points of light begin moving inside the dark thing, cold and hard, like stars trapped in smoke. It stands before the throne not as a body, but as a disturbance, a patch of night that brought its own sky. Everybody hates it on sight. This one speaks of seasons, of unlucky hours, of afflictions tied to constellations, of children born under difficult signs, travelers setting out at the wrong moment, sick beds worsening when certain stars rise, women struck with pains in particular months, madness arriving in cycles people cannot explain. It wraps itself in the old fear that the heavens are not just beautiful, but crowded. You can feel the court shrinking inward, because this is worse than one demon in one room. This is the suggestion that trouble might be scheduled, that above your little city, above your palace, above your temple mount with all its dust and shouting, there may be hostile influences drifting in courses no spear can reach. You already knew darkness had creatures in it. Now darkness has a calendar. Excellent. Sleep just got impossible for everyone. The star demon boasts that it rides certain hours and injures through timing. A fever spikes. A child cries inconsolably. A man loses reason. A woman miscarries. A flock panics in the night. Things go wrong and nobody knows why, except now there is a thing before you saying, with unbearable smugness, "Because I was there." You make it name the powers that overrule it. It resists harder than most. The ring burns. The chamber smells briefly like hot metal and bitter resin. Finally, it blurts the answer. Holy names, angelic guardians, appointed times of prayer, and the authority of the one who made the stars before vermin like this ever slithered into their shadows. The thing shudders saying it. Good. Let the heavens belong to God again. But the procession has not finished. It is barely warming up. Another female spirit is brought in bound and furious, and she arrives with the smell of crushed flowers left to rot in a sealed room. Sweet at first, then wrong, sickly, thick. The kind of perfume that makes your stomach turn because beneath the sweetness there is decay. Her hair is braided with little bones. Human? Bird? You do not investigate. She laughs whenever someone refuses to look at her. This one works through envy and adornment. Mirrors, jewelry, painted eyes, braided hair, garments chosen not for dignity, but for conquest. She inflames vanity until it becomes hunger, then turns hunger into rivalry, and rivalry into household misery. Friends become competitors. Sisters become enemies. Men become fools with expensive opinions. She is less a single temptation than an entire social collapse wearing bracelets. Several ladies of the court are deeply offended, probably because she sounds familiar. When forced to confess her weakness, she snarls out the old remedies: modesty, self-command, prayer, refusal to be baited into comparison, and holy power that sees through cosmetics all the way to the shriveled malice underneath. She folds in on herself while saying it, as though every honest word is a cramp. The scribes keep writing. Their tablets are now a nightmare index. You get one tied to Fever's next. He looks dry. That is the first thing you notice. Dry skin stretched too tight over long bones, lips split at the corners, fingernails yellowed and cracked, eyes bright with the nasty shine of someone who has never been well a day in his existence. Heat seems to travel with him. Not a good hearth warmth, not pleasant bread-baking warmth, more the sticky, miserable heat of a sick room where everyone smells of sweat and vinegar and fear. As he speaks, your own throat feels rough. He claims children burning through the night, adults shaking under blankets in noon heat, tongues swelling, skin flushing, pulse racing, breath turning sour. He delights in the delirious part best, the muttering, the seeing things, the way a sick person grabs at air as though invisible flies are landing on them. His voice grows eager when he describes weakness settling into muscles until lifting a cup feels like raising a gate. Ancient people did not have thermometers. They had this guy. You ask what drives him away. He hates clean water. He hates cooling remedies. He hates certain herbs, certain names, certain faithful petitions over the bed of the afflicted. Above all, he hates when his victims are recognized as prey and not blamed for their own condition. Interesting. Even monsters prefer confusion. From fever, you move to crookedness. A bent spirit shuffles in so twisted it looks assembled by an apprentice with poor instructions. Shoulder higher than shoulder. One knee backward. Neck jerking. Hands clenched in cramped hooks. It talks in little bursts, as if every word has to squeeze past a knot. It boasts of wrenching spines, tightening tendons, seizing jaws, freezing limbs, knotting backs until people wake screaming because they rolled over wrong and now cannot stand upright. Everybody in the room over 30 flinches. You can almost hear the collective vertebrae remembering things. This spirit haunts beds, thresholds, cold floors, bad sleeping mats, and long workdays. It loves laborers, loves women grinding grain, loves old men hauling jars, loves anyone tired enough to move carelessly. One awkward bend, one heavy lift, one draft through the doorway at night, and there it is, grinning from inside your lower back like a tiny sadistic accountant. Its weakness is named. Angelic intervention, blessings, certain acts of mercy, certain practical wisdoms too, which feels rude but fair. Apparently some afflictions are demons and bad posture working together. A marine horror comes after that, and honestly, you should have adjourned. But no. Curiosity has eaten your good judgment and is now licking the bowl. This one appears with a shell-cracking shriek. It has too many teeth and not enough face. Bits of barnacle cling to its skin. Its lower half keeps trying to become different things and failing. Tail, tentacles, scaled trunk, mass of slick ropey appendages that slap the floor and leave wet marks behind. The guards nearest it make identical faces of private regret. It preys on harbors, it says, on cargoes, on men trying to unload ships at dawn while gulls scream overhead, and everyone already smells like fish and rope rot. It tangles anchor lines. It startles horses on the quay. It breaks sleep in waterfront districts with cries that make nursing babies wail and grown men clutch their chests. A dock demon. Of course, docks have their own demon. Have you ever seen a dock? Even in good weather, they feel one argument away from murder. This creature also boasts of inspiring greed, men cheating on measures, merchants hiding damaged goods under better ones, sailors keeping back portions, traders watering wine, stretching grain, lying about weight, and swearing by heaven while doing it. So it is not just sea danger, it is commercial slime with teeth. You pin it down for the cure. Justice in trade, vigilance, prayer, and holy names again. Also, public honesty, which hurts it more than hooks. Naturally, nothing evil enjoys being itemized in broad daylight. The hours pass, and the line between illness and spirit grows thinner. A pain behind the eyes has a voice. A wasting disease has a personality. A sudden urge to strike someone with a stool apparently also has representation. One spirit admits to creeping into households and making new mothers afraid of their own babies. Another swears it delights in planting despair at sunset, just when the work is done, and there is finally enough silence for dark thoughts to start furnishing the room. Another causes stammering. Another inflames gluttony. Another delights in accidents on stairways, loose straps, snapped cords, broken axles, and all the infuriating little disasters that turn a manageable day into a full public meltdown. You begin to understand how people survive in a world like this. By naming things. By saying the fever is not random, the temptation is not sovereign, the panic at midnight is not the whole truth. By dragging every invisible horror into the lamplight and making it announce itself like a criminal made to remove its hood. The world is still dangerous afterward, but it is no longer faceless. That matters. Still, being the man conducting this parade of nightmares is doing something to you. You feel it in the pauses. At first, you questioned each spirit because the work required it. Build the temple, protect the people, identify the threat. Practical kingly business, only with more sulfur than usual. But now there are moments when the court goes quiet, and before the next thing is brought in, you feel a pulse of anticipation. What else is down there? What else can be made to kneel? What secret name? What hidden weakness? What humiliating confession can be dragged from the next creature's throat? That feeling is not entirely noble. You know it. You continue anyway. A spirit arrives wrapped in moth-eaten grandeur, as though once it wanted to be adored. It has wings, or maybe scraps of wings, hanging from its shoulders like ruined fans. Fine dust falls from them when it moves. It claims authority over omens and illusions. It turns ordinary noises into signs, harmless shadows into threats, and coincidence into obsession. A dog barks at night, and suddenly someone is certain death is coming. Oil spits in a lamp, and a whole household thinks judgment has entered by the roof. This one feeds not on events, but on interpretation. In modern terms, it is the patron demon of reading too much into everything and ruining your own week. Its weakness is steadiness, prayer, wisdom, refusal to surrender reason. Also, sleep, hilariously enough. Apparently, many omens lose their glamour after a full night's rest and some lentil stew. By now, the guards have stopped reacting to each new monstrosity with surprise. That should concern everyone. One yawns while a star shadow hisses. Another shifts his spear from one hand to the other as a bent female spirit describes seducing men in dreams and leaving them half mad at dawn. A scribe asks one demon to repeat itself because he missed the name of a particular angel. The demon stares at him in offended disbelief, like an aristocrat asked to spell its own title. Bureaucracy is flattening the supernatural, not erasing it. Worse, filing it. You walk between torches after midnight, past bound spirits muttering under seal, and the palace smells like hot oil, stale sweat, wax, damp wool, old stone, and a faint underlayer of things no building should contain. Salt marsh, grave soil, scorched hair, spoiled perfume, blood gone metallic, fish rot, herbs crushed under sandals. The whole place has the atmosphere of a shrine built over a sewer. And still they come. A spirit of muttering lies. A spirit of sudden violence. A spirit that crouches in corners and presses on sleepers' chests until they wake unable to move, certain something is sitting on them. Several attendants, hearing that, one go visibly pale, because apparently yes, that has happened. And no, they did not enjoy the explanation. One gaunt thing with fingers like needles boasts of entering ears and twisting thoughts until a person suspects every friend they have ever loved. Another delights in making judges lazy, which might be the most realistic demon of the evening. One takes credit for mildew, and honestly the arrogance is unbelievable. Imagine being an immortal force of corruption and choosing damp walls as your legacy. Aim higher, or lower, I suppose. By the final watch of the night, the room is exhausted. The torches burn down. Eyes ache. Necks stiffen. The scribe's wrists are failing them. Even the demons seem reduced, not in malice, but in glamour. Forced to stand there and explain themselves, they start to look less like unstoppable powers and more like parasites with public speaking obligations. That may be the greatest humiliation of all. And yet, the effect on you is not simple. The world has become fuller and uglier. Every pain has a possible face now. Every bad impulse might have a whisper behind it. Every shoreline, sickbed, marriage bed, rooftop, stair, nursery, and harbour seems one lamp short of trouble. Jerusalem does not feel safer after such knowledge. It feels crowded. You leave the chamber with the ring still warm on your hand. Outside, the night air is cooler but not clean. The city sleeps in layers. Distant dogs bark. Somewhere a baby cries, then quiets. Wind carries dust, dung, olive smoke, and the faint sweetness of fig from a nearby courtyard. Ordinary smells, ordinary sounds. But after a night like this, ordinary does not stay ordinary for long. You look up. The stars above the city are sharp as nails. The sea is far away, but you can almost smell it. Fever burns in some house you cannot see. Desire slips over some rooftop. A lie is whispered into some ear. A child wakes from a dream and begins to cry before the mother can even reach the mat. The dark is full of names now, and you know too many of them. That knowledge feels powerful. It also feels like opening a door that was supposed to stay shut. Because once every misery starts sounding like someone you can summon, question and command, suffering stops being only a thing to resist. It becomes a collection, a cabinet, a private treasury of horrors arranged by specialty. And a king with enough authority to force them into line may start lingering in that chamber a little too long, listening a little too closely, enjoying a little too much the sound of nightmares saying, "Yes, my lord," when they hate every word of it. 3 days pass. Nothing improves. Your temple still rises. Stone still thuds into place. Cedar still gets planed into sweet-smelling curls that stick to your sweaty ankles. Demons still haul, drag, lift, and mutter like deeply unionized workers trapped in the world's worst assignment. From a distance, it almost looks respectable. Up close, your court smells like obsession. Hot oil, old wax, ink, damp wool, incense ash that has settled into curtains, sleeves, and the back of your throat. Human fatigue. And beneath it all, that sour undernote of things dragged in from places no daylight was meant to inventory. The throne room has become part palace, part shrine, part holding pen, and part nightmare administrative office. You spend too much time there now. At first, nobody says anything. Kings are allowed eccentricities. That is one of the terrible perks of being king. A shepherd scratches himself in public, and everyone calls him disgusting. A king stares into the face of a bound demon for an extra 5 minutes, and suddenly it is mysterious wisdom, convenient. But servants notice. Servants always notice. They notice that you linger after the scribes are dismissed. They notice that you ask for certain spirits again, not because the building requires it, but because you have more questions. They notice that your meals go untouched while you sit in smoke and torchlight, elbow on the arm of your chair, ring flashing, listening to creatures explain the hidden machinery of temptation like consultants billing by the hour. You tell yourself it is caution. A king should know his enemies. A king should understand every threat to his people, every hidden snare, every force stalking the edges of ordinary life. That sounds noble. It even sounds true. The problem is the little thrill under it, the pulse you feel when another thing shudders and obeys. That part is not noble. That part has teeth. And now we arrive at the part nobody likes. Because evil is one thing when it storms the gate. It is another when it sits down, lowers its voice, and starts being interesting. One evening, the court is thinner than usual. Work on the temple has run late. Dust still hangs in the air from men coming and going with reports. The torches are already lit, though the western sky still glows dull orange above the city walls. Your neck is stiff. Your eyes burn. You should sleep. Instead, you call for another spirit. This one does not arrive snarling. It arrives graceful. Of course it does. A woman is brought before you, though even from 10 paces away you know woman is doing a lot of heavy lifting. She is veiled in gauze so fine it catches lamplight like spider silk. Gold rings glimmer at her wrists. Her hair smells of myrrh and some darker resin you cannot place. When she moves, the room changes around her, the way a room changes when somebody beautiful walks in, and everyone immediately becomes aware of their own posture. Half the court straightens by instinct. Embarrassing. She lowers her head, but not humbly. More like somebody indulging a game she already expects to win. The ring warms on your hand. She glances at it and smiles very slightly, and you get the unnerving sensation that she is not frightened enough. You ask her name. She gives you several. That should have been warning enough. Each name comes wrapped in a different promise. One for desire, one for favor, one for hidden knowledge, one for power carried in the body rather than the law. She speaks as if titles are perfumes, and she has a shelf full of them. Even the sound of her voice is calculated, low and smooth, with that soft edge that makes men lean in despite themselves. You do. Not much. Just enough to be annoying. She says she has moved through kingdoms before yours, through courts richer than yours, older than yours, more decadent than yours. She has stood near kings while they judged disputes, signed decrees, blessed armies, and then ruined themselves for the sake of one appetite they thought they controlled. She says this almost fondly, like a musician discussing favorite venues. Several older advisors go very still. They have heard enough already. You ask what harm she does. She laughs, not loudly. That would have been easier. Loud laughter is vulgar. This is worse. A private little laugh, the kind that says, "Oh, must we pretend you do not already know?" Then she begins listing her works. Not claws, not blood, not fevers. Softer things. A glance held half a second too long. A compliment offered in private. A fragrance remembered after the person leaves. A king who begins justifying one extra visit, one extra conversation, one small favor, because obviously he is still in charge. It is the oldest trap in the world, still popular. She speaks of altars too. Not at first. She circles toward them. Foreign rites, she says, are beautiful when seen by torchlight. More color than yours. More music. More perfume. More polished metal catching flame. More dancers. More carved images with inlaid eyes. More ceremony designed to appeal not only to heaven, but to the senses. Your worship, by comparison, can look severe. Clean? Yes. Holy? Yes. Also terribly resistant to pageantry. And pageantry is hard to resist when you are a king. You have spent your life around splendor. Splendor speaks your language. She tells you of hilltop shrines where incense burns in thick ropes, where garments rustle like water, where the offering bowls are heavy with wine, oil, honey, and blood, where devotion comes dressed for a feast. She does not present this as rebellion. She presents it as enrichment. Broaden your understanding. Appreciate the customs of other peoples. Keep peace with foreign wives and foreign allies. A little accommodation, a little courtesy, a little scented compromise. It sounds so reasonable. That is the disgusting part. Nobody ever falls because evil introduced itself as, "Hello, I am Catastrophe, and I would like to ruin your soul by Thursday." No, it arrives with good manners. The chamber smells thicker now, incense and sweat and hot brass. One of the torches spits resin and pops. Somewhere behind you, a scribe shifts his weight. You can feel the whole room waiting for your next question, and for the first time in a long time, you do not ask it quickly. You study her. She studies you back. Then you ask her weakness. Her expression changes so slightly, another man might miss it. The smallest tightening around the mouth, the faintest narrowing of the eyes. There it is, at last, under all the silk and smoothness, irritation. She names the usual enemies in a voice gone flatter now. Holiness, restraint, worship kept pure, desire refused instead of fed, the name of God spoken without trying to decorate it. You should have dismissed her there. You do not. You keep her longer, just to ask more, just to understand the full range of her influence, obviously, just to hear how foreign courts worship, just to know what kings before you did wrong, so you can avoid it. Very responsible, very prudent. absolutely not the behavior of a man who has begun enjoying the perfume of the trap. The court notices again. A guard clears his throat once, softly, the way men do when they want to interrupt a king without becoming a cautionary tale. You wave him silent. The spirit smiles without showing teeth. After that, the line inside you shifts, not all at once. That would almost be merciful. A dramatic fall would let you say, "Ah, yes, there, that was the terrible moment." But this is slower, a thread phrase, a little more each day. You still command, you still judge, you still oversee the work, you still wear wisdom like a robe everyone admires from across the room. Underneath, something has started to itch. You begin asking not only what demons fear, but what they admire in humans. Bad sign. You ask what makes a city vulnerable, what sort of songs they prefer, what offerings attract their attention, which stars, which herbs, which moments of weakness open the door wider. You ask with the cool face of a ruler gathering intelligence, but there is an appetite in the questions now. Curiosity has stopped behaving like a servant and has climbed onto the throne. It looks comfortable there. The palace women hear things. Servants talk. Perfume clings. Strange foreign trinkets begin appearing among gifts and tribute. Tiny carved images. Amulets hammered from silver. Little household gods with broad hips or hawk heads or lion faces. Each one wrapped in embroidered cloth and accompanied by someone explaining their local significance with the enthusiasm of a merchant who would love this problem to become your problem. Usually, such things would be catalogued, taxed, locked away, or smashed. Now some are kept, not openly, not on the central steps where every priest can see. That would be too stupid even for a man drifting. No, they appear in side rooms, private chambers, storerooms with extra guards, a terrace burner used for examining foreign customs, a small altar shape tested in cedar before anyone calls it an altar. Incense blends from beyond Israel tried late in the evening when fewer eyes are around. The smoke is sweeter. That is how nonsense begins. It smells better. One night, you walk onto a roof terrace above the palace, and the city below lies under moonlight, white walls and dark alleys and sleeping courtyards. A foreign woman waits there. Not a demon this time. Worse, in some ways, entirely human. Beautiful, intelligent, perfumed, politically useful, and carrying the confidence of someone raised where kings are expected to bend eventually. She does not argue theology. She laughs at that. Instead, she asks whether the God who made all nations is really threatened by one more altar. Whether honoring her gods dishonors yours or simply displays royal generosity. Whether love should not make room. Whether peace between peoples might be sealed not only by treaties and grain shipments, but by shared rights. Her bracelets click softly when she gestures. Her perfume is warm and floral, heavy enough to taste. Below you, the city sleeps. Above you, the stars look sharp enough to puncture excuses. You start making them anyway. This is diplomacy, you think. This is statecraft. This is kindness. This is breadth of mind. This is what great kings do. They absorb. They include. They gather what is excellent from all peoples under their hand. It sounds magnificent. It is also exactly how rot talks when it borrows a crown. Soon there are more. Wives, concubines, guests from distant kingdoms with retinues, fabrics, musicians, incense boxes, carved household gods packed in straw, and priestesses with coal around their eyes who know exactly how to make a ritual feel exclusive. The palace grows richer and stranger. Different dialects fill the halls. New songs drift from private apartments after dark. Foreign foods appear at the tables, sticky with honey, thick with spice, glistening with oils that leave your fingers scented for hours. Pleasure accumulates. So does compromise. At first, it is tolerance, then participation by presence, then arrangement, then provision. A space prepared, a brazier supplied, oil given, a hill set aside, a shrine allowed, craftsmen commissioned quietly, stone cut, wood shaped, metal polished. You know exactly how sanctuaries are made. You built one already for the right God. That knowledge does not become less dangerous when misapplied. It becomes deluxe. And the awful irony of it all could make a goat laugh. You, who once bound demons to drag stones for holy work, now begin directing human hands to raise places where other powers will be welcomed. The same administrative brilliance. The same attention to materials. The same gift for ordering labor. A king's talents are morally neutral in the way a knife is neutral. Wonderful for bread. Also wonderful for stabbing. Depends whose hand is on it. The priests are uneasy. That is putting it politely. Some come to you with careful faces and careful words. Too blunt, and they become dead prophets by lunchtime. Too soft, and they fail the God they serve. So they choose the painful middle path. My lord, they say, my king. There is concern. There is murmuring. There are places where incense is rising that should not rise. There are names being spoken over offerings that should not receive them. There are rumors of altars beyond the walls. You answer them with kingly patience, which is one of the more dangerous forms of irritation. You remind them of peace, of alliance, of wisdom broad enough to understand many peoples, of your devotion to the temple, which still stands, does it not, glorious and central and attended? Must everything be panic? Must every courtesy be called corruption? You make reasons sound so elegant. You could probably justify mold to a mason if you had enough time. The priests leave unsatisfied. So do you. Because somewhere beneath all the polished explanations, you know exactly what is happening. You feel it in those private moments after the courtiers have gone, and the chamber is left with only cooling lamps and smoke gone stale. You feel it when you pass a foreign burner and pause because you like the smell. You feel it when a whispered ritual sounds exotic instead of dangerous. You feel it when command turns into flirtation with the very thing you once kept pinned to the floor. Power has made you careless, not weak, careless. There is a difference, and it is somehow worse. A weak man falls because he cannot resist. A powerful man falls because he starts assuming resistance is optional. You have commanded too much, and now your soul has begun behaving like palace staff, stepping aside whenever you enter. One night it becomes impossible not to see. The air is windless. Heat clings to the stone long after sunset. A private court has been prepared on a rise outside the main palace complex. Lamps line the path in shallow niches. Perfumed smoke coils upward in pale blue ribbons. Musicians play something soft and repetitive that gets into your head like fingers kneading dough. Women in embroidered garments move around a low altar where offerings have already been laid out. Cakes, oil, wine, flowers, a little dish of salt and blood darkening in a shallow bowl. The scene is beautiful, annoyingly beautiful. That is part of why it is dangerous. Evil rarely decorates itself like a slaughterhouse. It prefers to look expensive. It prefers polished bronze and carefully folded linen and music that makes your bones unclench. It prefers to say, "Surely what is lovely cannot be that bad. You know better. You walk forward anyway. The stone under your sandals is still warm. The incense catches in your throat, sweet and resinous, and a little rotten underneath, like fruit beginning to turn. The foreign wife beside you smiles with relief because you came. Priests of another god lower themselves in practiced gestures. Somebody places a bowl in your hands. For one moment, the night holds still. And in that stillness, all your earlier victories look different. The ring on your hand once made demons scream truths they hated. It exposed them, named them, humiliated them. But the ring never changed what lived in you. It never cauterized pride. It never strangled appetite. It never made fascination safe. It gave you authority over spirits, not immunity to seduction. Those are not remotely the same thing, and the difference now stands in front of you wearing perfume and gold. You lift the bowl. The music continues. A torch bends in the hot breeze. Somewhere in the dark beyond the lamps, a night bird makes a single dry call. The smell of blood mingles with incense and crushed petals underfoot. Your pulse beats in your wrists. You can almost feel, all around you, the invisible audience of things that once trembled when you summoned them. Not trembling now, watching. That is the horror of it. Not that a demon leaps from the brazier and cackles. Not that the earth splits. Not that thunder announces your stupidity in public. No, the night remains elegant. The ritual remains smooth. Your fall arrives with excellent lighting and competent musicians. You pour, just a little, enough. After that, compromise stops pretending to be temporary. It becomes architecture, habit, schedule, routine. One altar on one hill, another for another wife. A place for this god, another for that one. The city that once centered your worship now sprouts rival flames at its edges. Smoke rises from too many places. Names not meant for Israel drift over the ridges at dusk. People notice. Of course they notice. Cities always know when their rulers start cheating on the covenant. The demons, if they are anywhere near, do not need to boast now. They can simply enjoy the view. You still have the ring. That may be the bleakest detail of all. It still gleams. It still bears its power. It still could make some crouching horror choke out its weakness before your throne. But now, when you look at it in lamplight, it no longer feels only like a gift. It feels like evidence. Proof that a man can hold sacred power in his hand and still steer himself directly into ruin because he liked being impressive more than being clean. The temple stands. So do the other altars. The city breathes under them all, full of bakers, mothers, guards, merchants, water carriers, children asleep on mats, old men coughing in courtyards, dogs nosing refuse, women grinding grain before dawn. Ordinary people still live ordinary lives beneath the decisions of a king who has started listening to the wrong voices. That may be the saddest part. Your compromises do not stay private. They leak downhill, always downhill. And by the time you understand how far the drift has gone, the incense is already in your clothes, the foreign songs are already in your halls. And the man who once commanded demons for holy work is standing among beautiful distractions, finding that command was never the same thing as safety. The lamps burn on, the smoke rises, and somewhere in the dark, obedience has turned back into invitation. The lamps burn lower, the tools go quiet. Jerusalem drifts into the long memory of night. So after all of that smoke, shouting, stone dust, and deeply upsetting demon small talk, what was all this trying to give you? Because nobody keeps a story like this alive for generations just because it features a king doing supernatural pest control with a magic ring. Entertaining, yes. Extremely weird, also yes. But the point runs deeper than that. Under all the monstrous bragging and palace incense, this whole thing keeps circling one big comfort and one big warning. The comfort comes first. What hides in the dark is weaker once it is named. That is why so much time gets spent dragging one horrible creature after another into the open and making it talk. Name, trade, favorite victims, preferred misery, embarrassing weakness. It goes on and on, like the world's worst intake interview. But that repetition matters. The nightmare is not left vague. It is pinned down. People are not told only, be afraid, there are terrible forces out there somewhere. They are shown that these forces can be exposed, cornered, and made to confess where they break. That matters more than it sounds. Fear gets very fat when it stays foggy. A pain in your body, a sudden urge toward ruin, a sickness in the house, a thought that won't leave you alone, a season of misfortune that feels personal. Ancient people lived close to all of that. Very close. No antibiotics, no therapy, no electrical lighting, just darkness, fever, childbirth, grief, and that constant suspicion that the world was crowded with things eager to bite. So a story that says, yes, the darkness has names, but those names can be spoken aloud, and those powers can be mastered. That story lands like water on a hot day. It gives shape to terror. And once terror has shape, it stops feeling infinite. That is the first gift tucked inside all the grotesque details. Hidden evil does its best work when it stays half seen. Once dragged into torchlight, once forced to answer, once made to admit, actually, I can be resisted by this, and driven off by that, it loses some of its theatre. Still dangerous, yes. Still foul. Still very much not someone you'd want as a houseguest, but smaller, manageable, less like a cosmic fog, and more like vermin with a list of known weaknesses. And that leads into the second thing. Authority in this story is meant to be useful, not flashy. Useful. The ring is not handed over so Solomon can become the ancient world's creepiest stage magician. It is given because a boy is being harmed, workers are being terrorized, and holy work is being disrupted. The first use of power is protection, relief, order restored. A child gets defended. A household gets peace. A building meant for worship stops being turned into an after-hours supernatural harassment zone. That is what good authority looks like here. It serves. It does not preen. It does not strut around demanding applause because it made something ugly kneel. It takes what has been given and uses it to shield people who cannot shield themselves. Even the strange business of demons hauling stone lands there. Grotesque, yes. Absurd, definitely. But the image underneath is that chaos gets made to carry the load instead of setting the agenda. Evil does not get to run the worksite. It gets put to work under judgment. That is a satisfying idea. You can see why it's stuck. But then the story turns, and this is where it gets painfully human. Because the same authority that begins in service can slide into spectacle if the person holding it starts enjoying the feeling too much. And Solomon absolutely starts enjoying it too much. At first, he is handling danger. Then he is studying it. Then he is lingering over it. Then he is listening with interest that has gone bad around the edges. That shift is the whole hinge of the story. You can almost feel the moment's sacred responsibility starts tasting like personal thrill. And apparently that flavor is hard to resist. That is why the downfall matters more than the victories. The victories are impressive. The downfall is useful. Plenty of people can imagine being powerful. Far fewer want to admit how quickly power can become fascinating in the wrong way. Solomon can command demons. Wonderful. He can force them to reveal their tricks. Impressive. He can make dark things serve holy purposes. Amazing. But none of that means he is safe from pride, appetite, vanity, or flattery. Not remotely. The story does not let spiritual power equal spiritual health. That distinction is one of the sharpest things in the whole tale. A man may hold the ring and still lose his grip on himself. He may know the names of evil and still enjoy hearing them too much. He may build the temple and still fill the hills with rival altars later. He may command what terrifies others and yet remain completely vulnerable to the oldest seductions on earth. Admiration, pleasure, curiosity with no brakes, and the little narcotic buzz of being obeyed. That is bleak, also accurate enough to sting. So when the tale spends time on Solomon's drift, it is not spoiling the fun. It is finishing the thought. The storytellers are not content to leave you with, a wise king bossed around monsters, and that was that. No, they keep going until the uncomfortable part arrives. The man who could expose evil could not outsource his own humility. The ring could bind demons. It could not bind his ego. Sacred tools are not personality upgrades. They do not automatically make a soul clean. And that lands with real closure, because it explains everything that came before. Why name evil? Because unnamed evil grows in the dark. Why expose it? Because exposure weakens its grip. Why give authority? So harm can be restrained and people can be protected. Why show the fall of the one holding that authority? Because control over dark things is not the same as freedom from dark desires. That is the whole bundle. Wisdom without humility curdles. It does. It goes sour in the jar. Starts out rich, ends up smelling off. A person can be brilliant, discerning, spiritually impressive, and still become a menace if delight in control outruns love of what is good. Solomon's tragedy is not that he lacked gifts. It is that he began to trust the gifts more than the God who gave them. He got comfortable standing too close to what should only have been judged. He treated danger like a fascinating dinner guest. And eventually, he stopped just interrogating darkness and started accommodating it. That is always the worst turn. Not being attacked by evil, entertaining it. By the end, the resolution this story offers is strangely steadying. The darkness is real, but it is not ultimate. It can be named, resisted, cornered, and overruled. People are not helpless in a world full of things that stalk and whisper. But the story also refuses cheap confidence. It will not tell you that authority makes you untouchable, or that wisdom makes you incapable of falling, or that holy work performed yesterday guarantees a clean heart tomorrow. It gives comfort with guardrails, which is honestly more useful than flattery. So you leave Solomon's court carrying both truths at once. Hidden things lose power when dragged into the light. And the person holding the lamp had better stay humble, because light in the hand is not the same thing as light in the heart. That is why the ending feels sad, but not empty. The temple still stands in the mind. The ring still gleams. The demons still hate being named. And above all of it hangs that quiet, durable reminder. Power is safest when it kneels. Wisdom lasts longer when it stays teachable. A king may command 1,000 dark voices and still need guarding from the one rising gently inside his own chest. And with that, the city grows quieter. The courtyards cool, the incense thins, the stones keep their heat a little longer, then lose it. Somewhere above the sleeping roofs, Solomon's troubled legend lingers on, bright, uneasy, and enduring. The night breeze finally reaches you in the upper city. It comes thin and late, slipping over rooftops and courtyard walls, carrying ash, olive smoke, and the faint sourness of animals penned too close to people. Jerusalem exhales. The shouting has died down. Hammers are silent. Even the donkeys, for once, seem to have accepted defeat. You stand in the after of everything now. The temple has risen. The stones are set. Cedar beams rest where they were meant to rest. Gold has flashed in lamplight. Priests have moved through holy space with careful hands. Songs have climbed upward. And beneath all of it, buried under incense and ceremony, sits the memory nobody can quite scrub out. Some of those stones were hauled into place by things that hated God, hated people, and hated every minute of their assigned masonry. It is a deeply uncomfortable detail, also impossible to forget. So Solomon remains in the mind exactly that way, brilliant and uneasy, radiant and slightly alarming. The king with proverbs on his tongue and a heaven-sent ring in his hand, the builder of the house, the examiner of horrors, the man who could make a demon stand still long enough to state its name, its trade, and the peculiar little thing that sent it running. That image sticks. Of course it does. A king ordering the dark to sit down and explain itself is the kind of story people carry home. They tell it beside cooking fires. They murmur it in crowded rooms after the children have gone still. They pass it along while trimming wicks and scraping the bottom of bowls and listening to the night noises outside the door. Because nights are long in a world without electric light. Every creak matters. Every fever feels personal. Every shadow in the courtyard seems to be considering a career in haunting. And so, the name of Solomon lingers, not just as a ruler, as a kind of shelter. You can feel why people kept reaching for his memory when the dark pressed close. A child burns with fever. A woman wakes from a dream with her heart pounding. A man limps in from the field with pain in his side that will not leave. The house feels wrong. The season feels cursed. The air itself seems crowded. And somewhere in that fear comes the old stubborn comfort. There was once a king who knew the names of terrible things. He was not helpless before them. That matters. Even now, with the lamps low and the city quiet, you can almost see how the tale would be told again. Not in polished halls this time, but in ordinary rooms. Mud brick walls, woven mats, smoke-blackened ceilings, bread hard enough to count as a minor weapon. Someone speaking low while the oil burns down, and everybody pretends they are not listening extra carefully whenever the wind touches the door. They would say Solomon had a ring. They would say the ring came from heaven. They would say spirits that tormented people had to answer him, one by one, like criminals hauled in for the most humiliating court appearance imaginable. No lurking mysteriously, no vague, dramatic missed behavior. Names, confessions, weaknesses, the whole dreadful inventory, and the listeners would nod. Because a world full of unnamed fear is too much. A world where the fear can be summoned, questioned, and overruled is still frightening. But at least it has edges. At least somebody once stood in the middle of it without collapsing. At least there was a voice stronger than the whispering, That is no small thing to inherit. Still, Solomon's memory does not rest easy. It never could. Because the same king who forced dark things to speak also drifted toward dark desires with his own mouth still full of wisdom. The same hand that held the ring reached for what it should have refused. The same mind, sharp enough to interrogate demons, proved soft in all the wrong places when flattery, appetite, and glittering compromise came strolling in dressed like a good idea. That stain stays with the legend. It should. Without it, the whole memory would turn into fantasy, all shine and no warning. Just a clever king running celestial pest control for applause. But that is not the shape that endured. What endured was stranger and sadder. The mighty man was real. The gift was real. The authority was real. So was the failure. You are left with both. That is why the legend lasts. Perfect heroes go stale. People can only stare at polished bronze for so long before they stop seeing themselves in it. Solomon remains because he was magnificent and breakable at once. He could order a spirit to carry stones and still fail to govern his own cravings. He could command what lurked in the walls and still leave his own inner rooms unlocked. It is not flattering. It is familiar. So, his story keeps breathing. Long after the court officials are dust, long after the labor gangs are gone, long after the scaffolds have rotted, the robes have decayed, and the last worker who saw those temple stones hauled into place has become a name on nobody's lips. The city changes. Kingdoms crack. Armies pass through like bad weather. Fires come. Exile comes. New rulers swagger in with polished sandals and eventually become skeletons like everyone else. But Solomon remains. Not standing in front of you, of course. More stubborn than that. He remains as a voice in lamplight, as a rumor with weight, as the uneasy certainty that wisdom can be glorious without being safe, and power can be holy without making the person holding it untouchable. He remains wherever people speak of the dark as something that can be faced rather than merely feared. That is a durable hope. You can feel it settling over the city now. The streets are nearly empty. Somewhere a gate creaks. Somewhere water is being poured into a clay jar with that soft glugging sound that always seems louder at night. A dog turns in its sleep. A child coughs behind a wall. Above all of it hangs the sky, huge and indifferent, with stars looking down like they have seen every king's rise and every king's funeral, and are not especially impressed by either. The palace is quieter now too. No demon dragged in chains for questioning. No officers scrambling. No irritated spirit being forced to explain why it specializes in headaches, lust, fever, or general domestic ruin. No ring thrust forward with authority blazing. Just old stone cooling by degrees. Just carved wood holding the day's warmth a little longer. Just the memory of a throne where judgment once sat, and where even extraordinary gifts could not keep time from doing what time does. That is the last softness in the story. Not victory exactly, not defeat either, something more human than either one. Solomon could not keep everything. Not youth, not purity, not the clean line between calling and temptation, not even his own legend from gathering thorns. But neither was he erased. The house he built entered memory. The wisdom he spoke entered memory. The warning of his fall entered memory too. Taken together, they formed something people could carry through centuries of fear. A story where darkness is real, naming it matters, authority can serve, and even the gifted must be careful. So the king with the ring does not vanish. He dims. That is different. He becomes the sort of figure seen best from a distance, in the same way a lamp across a courtyard looks steadier once you stop walking toward it. You no longer need to stand in his chamber and smell the hot oil, the cedar dust, the sweat, the old incense trapped in curtains, and that faint metallic tang of power being used too close to danger. You have already been there. You have seen enough. Now the image settles where enduring things settle, in memory, in warning, in comfort, and in the long tradition of people refusing to give the dark the final word, because that may be the quietest thing left when all the spectacle is gone. Not the ring itself, not the palace, not even the throne, just that stubborn refusal. The night is not empty, and it is not always kind. Strange things move at the edges of human life. Temptation still dresses itself beautifully. Fear still swells in corners. Pride still whispers in voices people are embarrassingly willing to call their own. But the old hope remains. What stalks can be faced, what hides can be named, what boasts can be answered, and what torments does not rule forever. So Jerusalem cools under the stars. The temple rests on its hill, silent now, all its noise spent. The king's chambers are dark. The ring lives on only in telling. And somewhere, from one room to another, from one generation to the next, the story keeps moving softly through the world, of wisdom and warning, of names spoken aloud, of power that trembled, of a man who commanded much and could not keep all of himself, and of a darkness that was never allowed to remain entirely unnamed. The city sleeps, the stones endure, and Solomon lingers long after the voices that feared him, served him, praised him, and watched him falter have gone quiet. And somewhere the story continues.